The new Xelmus AURAs may just be the best lenses of 2025 and some of the finest cinema lenses ever sold. Hey everybody, Nick here. So we just got back from Cinegear 2025, which was a wonderful trip. I'll probably have 2 or 3 videos to share about the experience, but we didn't really go this year quite so much for the gear of Cinegear. We were there mostly for the experiences, the people, the networking opportunities, and honestly just to learn. There's so much amazing stuff going on in the world of filmmaking right now, and I love soaking it all up and reporting it back here on this little public diary that is my YouTube channel. And speaking of networking, it was such a delight to meet so many of you, the fine people who watch this channel. It was so wonderful to hear from those of you who said hello, or asked for a selfie, or just said you're excited to see my feature film, which is called The Game of Life, by the way, and is in post-production as I speak. So thank you to everyone who reached out. It was really special to hear from each and every one of you. Anyway, back to Cinegear. So, as I mentioned, we weren't super focused on equipment this time around, but there was one particular booth I knew we'd need to stop at, and of course it was Xelmus. Not only is this, to my knowledge, Xelmus's first public exhibition in the United States, but they had a full working set of their brand new AURA lenses on display. I was extremely keen to get my eyes and my hands on those lenses, so my wife and I went from the expo entrance on the wonderful backlot at Universal Studios, and we made a beeline straight for stage 30 at the far end of the expo, right to Xelmus. They didn't even have their demo cameras set up yet. We were the first people at their booth, and they kind of had to deal with me like a little excited toddler at Christmas getting ready to open a gift. But they were super patient and super kind. The AURA is the second set of lenses offered by Xelmus, following their stunning and groundbreaking Apollo line, which I am lucky enough to own. If you've been here before, you'll know that these are some of the only rotating astigmatizer anamorphic lenses which you can actually purchase, because all the other astigmatizer lenses are at Panavision, and they can only be rented. Yes, there's also the Caldwell Chameleons, but at $34,000 a pop, you're more likely to rent those as well. The particular look of astigmatizer anamorphic lenses has been the foundation of modern cinematography basically from the 1970s to today. Panavision stood alone as the only place you could go to give your productions that particular look for about 50 years. But now Xelmus is changing that. Their Apollo lenses give you all the classic anamorphic traits we've come to adore in a modern cinema housing with standard gears, PL mounts, etc. If you want to know more about the Apollos, I have several videos related to them, and I'll put links in the description, but long story short, I really like them and what the company means for filmmaking generally. I used the Apollos here for about half of my feature, called The Game of Life, for the portion of the film which feels more like a classic Hollywood adventure. The characters go from the sterile white walls of a psychiatric facility, filmed on Desio Film Arl spherical lenses, to the dazzling lights of Las Vegas Boulevard, for which we use the Xelmus Apollo anamorphic lenses. The difference in look is immediate and palpable, designed to make an emotional difference to the audience, even if it's only a subconscious one. So that's Apollo. What is AURA, and how does it compare to Apollo? The short answer is that AURA offers a cleaner look, perhaps even closer to modern Panavision glass, with smoother bokeh for a softer background, higher resolution, and less intense flares. But the trade-off is that you get a little bit less coverage. They're not native full-frame lenses, and not quite the insane close focus of the Apollos, although still very good for anamorphic lenses. But before I get into my demo footage, I need to be really clear about something. These are still early samples, and some things may be subject to change. Oleg Krasiuk, the founder of Xelmus, originally didn't want anyone taking home demo footage in case it may end up being misleading for one reason or another. I pleaded with him for a bit, and he very graciously let me take some footage to share with you. But I want to be clear that this is not official Xelmus promotional material, and I'm very lucky to be able to share it with you at all. If there's anything that seems unusual, it's probably my fault, and not necessarily representative of anything wrong with the lenses, which are quite extraordinary. Okay, here's the demo footage. Starting with the 50mm lens, we can already see a noticeably sharper image than the Apollo lenses, with more contrast, even wide open at t2.2. I shot these samples between 2.2 and 2.5, and they're already very sharp there. But what AURA does very differently is that the bokeh is quite a bit smoother, with its ovals having no hard edge that the Apollo can often exhibit. Where Apollo backgrounds can sometimes be a bit busy, the AURA backgrounds are almost always going to be a bit smoother, reminding me a little bit of the new Panavision Ultra Vista or Ultra Panatar 2, Those sets have been used on productions like Andor, Wicked, Beetlejuice 2, Thunderbolts, The Mandalorian, and more. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about harsh or busy versus smooth backgrounds, these things are relative. You can still get a pretty melty background on the Apollos. It's just going to be a matter of context and taste. Getting to flares, the auras are quite a bit more restrained compared to Apollo, without the multiple spherical flare elements. And they're a bit less saturated, much less wild generally, but still absolutely beautiful and definitely sophisticated. It's not just one streak. It has multiple components, and those components will change depending on your light source, its intensity, its angle and distance to the lens, your focal distance, etc. The 50mm had my favorite flares of what I saw. It includes these multiple strong diagonals, which are just stunningly beautiful. And those diagonals get broader as you approach close focus. I just love, love, love this lens and its flare. Flare color is still blue, a little bit more muted than what you see on Apollo. And to be clear, it's a blue bias, but you can still get other colors in a flare if your source is strongly enough saturated with a different color. So even my Apollo lenses, which are heavily blue biased, can even show a red flare if you shine a strong enough red light at them. That red flare will be much less intense compared to shining a blue or white light of the same strength, because the blue coatings on the lens will absorb a lot of the red light spectrum. So remember, flare behavior is always very context dependent on any lens. Those of you who simply don't like blue flares, but you love everything else about the AURA lenses, just make sure you use a tungsten source and you'll get flares closer to that color. And if you're just a real flare junkie like I am, you absolutely must subscribe to cineflares.com. It's a subscription service run by Hollywood ASC cinematographer Marcus Forderer. He's shot the likes of Red Notice, September 5th, and the upcoming Voltron movie, about which I am very excited. I loved Voltron as a kid, and I watched the Netflix show with my kids and everything. Anyway, Marcus's service is the largest repository of lens flare information on the planet and is constantly growing and evolving with actual video demo samples of lens flares from everything to Panavision to Laowa. And you can even do comparative testing with 2-up flares. I've been a subscriber of that service for over a year, and I get lots of value out of it. I'm not affiliated with the service in any way. I pay regular price for it just like anyone else. I just think it's incredible, and I want to make sure lots of folks know about it so that the service can continue to grow and thrive. Anyway, back to Xelmus. I can't show you flares from any other focal lengths, just the 50mm. The 30mm lens wouldn't fit onto my breakthrough VND adapter here because its rear element protrudes just a little too far. I think that's the same case for the Apollo 32mm as well. So you'll have to either use matte box filters on that lens or use a camera with an internal ND. And I can't show you flares on the 75mm because Xelmus said the coatings on their showroom example of that lens were not final. And Oleg didn't want folks seeing a flare color, which may be slightly different in production. So fair enough. But I can tell you that the 75mm AURA flares very much like the 50mm AURA I just showed you, but without the strong diagonal elements. And I can still show you footage from the 75mm, which again is completely beautiful. Just like the 50mm, it has that smoother bokeh, still very nice close focus at about 2'8", excellent resolution and contrast. And all the lenses in this set do feature some barrel distortion, but it's a fair bit less than what's in the Apollo lenses. The AURA lenses are generally just much cleaner, more modern looking. They seem to be exactly what was on the wish list for a lot of folks who loved the look of the Apollos, but just didn't want to go quite that extreme. That's exactly how Xelmus described them to me, saying they were taking feedback from customers and users of the lenses and cinematographers and building a set which kind of satisfied those requests. On the topic of coverage, I don't know the exact imaging area of the AURA lenses. Xelmus describes them as covering Super 35 in 4:3 mode, which would be about 19mm tall by about 25mm wide. But I shot them on my full-frame V-Raptor X in 8K 6:5 mode, which is almost 22mm tall by 29mm wide, and both the 50 and 75mm lenses covered it just fine, which is fantastic news. I'm assuming that's close to the limit of the lenses because they're not marketed as full frame, meaning if you go up to 24mm tall, maybe they tap out, or maybe they just can't be wide enough for a 2:4:1 deliverable, who knows. All I know is that on my camera, they had plenty of coverage and I was very happy about it. Let's talk mechanics. Right away, you might notice the AURA lenses are longer than Apollo's for a given focal length. This is because Xelmus has worked hard to eliminate focus breathing from those lenses. They still have the vertical breathing inherent to astigmatizer anamorphics, meaning that the out-of-focus elements stretch vertically. But there's no change to the horizontal framing. The Apollos don't breathe on focal lengths at 60 millimeters and below, but 75 millimeters and longer did exhibit some focus breathing. I notice it on my 100 millimeter Apollo in particular. But the Auras don't breathe on any focal length. There are corrective elements in the lens to counteract the breathing, which is why the barrels are longer. But overall, they're still very lightweight lenses for this kind, about 1,800 grams a lens, similar to Apollos, until you get to the 135 millimeter focal length, which clocks in at about 2,500 grams, still relatively light for what they are. The focus and iris rings on Aura are better placed than Apollo. I ended up custom building a set of special rings which step up the smaller 126 teeth of Apollo to these larger versions. I've seen multiple sets of Apollos get scarred by poorly placed lens motors, which ended up chewing into the white paint on these barrels. So I eliminated it with this design, but with Auras, that problem is gone out of the box. Everything is built very well. And just in general, you can sort of see Xelmus upping their game in the fit and finish department. The Aura lenses all feature 95 millimeter diameter fronts, which is pretty astonishing for everything these lenses are doing, and sort of the wide range of focal lengths. I think they're going to end up being from 20 to at least 135 millimeters. And that means you can even potentially use slip-on diopters when needed, like the lovely set that Viltrox makes. Speaking of that close focus, it starts at about 2 feet for the 30 millimeter, going up to 2'2" for the 50, 2'8" for the 75 millimeter, and 3'1" for the 135 millimeter focal length. In general, and especially considered as a set, the Aura are going to be good enough for most close-up work. The higher resolution also means that you can get away with a little bit more cropping if that's called for. And if you really need to get closer, you can use diopters as mentioned, but if you want to get really, really close, the upcoming 60 millimeter Aura will be a true macro lens, focusing to about 1 centimeter away from the front element. You know, I'm not sure what that reproduction factor will be, but I can bet you won't need a diopter for just about anything on that lens. And in a lovely piece of news on the mechanical front, it looks like the Auras will finally have PL flanges with notches on all 4 cloves. That means you can shoot in square format if you like, without any modifications. The Apollos only have 1 notch, so they can't be shot in square format out of the box. I have a video on how I modified a set of Apollos for just that purpose, but no need to get out the drill press for Aura. They've got it that way stock. Maybe Xelmus will update the Apollos to do the same thing. I really hope they do. And one last thing about mechanics. Anamorphic lenses are generally described as needing more maintenance than spherical lenses due to the complexity of adding cylindrical optics and an additional focusing mechanism. Astigmatizers are even more complicated still, with multiple focusing groups which must move in synchrony, in multiple directions, in multiple axes, with very precise timing. This is where I have to once again mention the lens servicing company, The Keep, and their astonishing lead technician and co-founder, Mike Heibarger. If you're looking to own a set of lenses like this, you absolutely want to know Mike and establish a service relationship with The Keep. There's really nowhere else I would personally feel comfortable sending my Apollos, or Aura lenses if I had those. I had the opportunity to talk with Mike over the weekend as well, and even visit The Keep itself out in Simi Valley. I wish I'd had time to sit down for a dedicated interview with Mike, and maybe I'll ask him for one of those in the future, because he is such an amazing encyclopedic well of knowledge, and a great guy too. You just get him going, and then he's like a fire hose of amazing information and stories, and here I am with my brain like a little shot glass just trying to catch all the water. Mike has personally serviced all 3 of my Apollo lenses, and it made a huge difference from where they were when I received them to where they are now. If and when they need service again, there's only one call I'm going to make. The Keep is also starting to produce lenses itself, and their new feather zooms look really incredible. The specifications are kind of nuts. You know, a 20 to 35 t2.8 zoom that weighs less than a Nisi Athena but can cover 65 millimeter open gate. That's crazy. Anyway, going back to the Aura lenses. This is a complete guess, but my 6th sense tells me that maybe the Auras are built to be a little bit more resilient than the Apollos. Again, it's a guess, but everything seems a bit more dialed in, a little bit more robust. If that's true, then maybe the Auras will be a little bit less likely to go out of tune. That doesn't mean you won't need service, but maybe you'll need it slightly less often with Aura compared to Apollo. Again, just my feeling here. And I have to reiterate, it's incredible that the Auras even exist at all. Not to mention that these lenses are evolving, they're growing in number and available options. Oleg Krasiuk and the team at Xelmus have battled tremendous adversity to bring these lenses to life. These lenses are designed and assembled in the city of Kharkiv, Ukraine, right in the heart of the Russian invasion, with tragic headlines frequently pouring forth with that city's name on them. The ability of these folks to persevere and bring us these inspiring tools despite that threat is a really incredible testament to their passion and the resilience of the human spirit. It's sobering to remember that we use these tools to play, to create, to have fun, and to make our livelihoods, while others are fighting for their very lives. So I can only say that I want to support these people and spread the word about their good work so that hopefully it can continue. I don't know when I'll get to play with the Aura lenses next. There likely won't be very many sets available until production really gets going later in the year, but I can say that they're absolutely incredible and something I would buy in an instant if I had the spare capital or if I was a rental house looking into these kinds of things. For now, I'm just hanging on to my Apollos because I adore them, especially after Mike's wonderful service from the Keep. But you can better believe that I will be angling for a way to shoot with the Auras at some point in the future. I can imagine a lot of rental houses will be jumping on these, and I can see them becoming extremely popular with productions of all kinds. They really stand alone in terms of what they offer, especially in terms of a product you can actually own. And for that reason, I see a lot of demand for them coming down the pipe. That's going to be all for today, but let me know if I can answer any other questions for you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.